Okay, it's recording. Yeah, what I want to say is with practical advices when you are in that, let's say, dark place. What I were too, especially this year, a lot. Sometimes fall back into that place. It's like
Video gone, Aaron.
Aaron. It's like oh yeah, okay. No, just the camera is off. Okay,
Right.
no. Yeah, when you from my own experience, I see that now. It's when you fall back into these, let's say, depressed spaces again. It's you have to have your practice in a way. You have to, but you don't have to. But I think it helped for me a lot to doing yoga and meditation and eating good and going outside in the forest. That's for me is the best practical advice that I can give people when they are in these negative thought loops, depressive states of mind and feeling, not just mind. It's most of the time for me. It's not the mind. It's a feeling that. It's like a non-motivational feeling, like a depressed feeling that comes over you, and you don't want to do anything at all. No matter what you think about, you don't want to do it. But you have to. Then you think. Then you can really slip into the thinking, like, yeah, that's the entity, that's something that's attached to me, and that's doing it to me. No, you're always doing it to yourself. That's the thing. But to say to people then in that state, to say, yeah, do this, do that, and you should do this. And sometimes you make it worse for them. Sometimes you just have to say to them then, okay, you are in that space now, in the not good feeling place, and then feel that. Don't suppress that, and then start with yoga or meditation or walking and all that stuff.
Well, it's like sometimes when you speak into these people, have you noticed when probably a psychoanalyst or a psychologist speaks to people, they move their hands and they might be doing gestures that the person's sort of consciousness cannot see. They might be just moving the finger upwards or something like that, and it's almost sending signals to the subconscious to rise up, to move upwards. And people can do that, and the subconscious reads that, even though they can't see it consciously.
It's it's a possibility, of course.
Well, the other Sunday he was all right. Wouldn't you have to chat with me?
Yeah, yeah. On Sunday I was in that not good, so good feeling place, but again I forced myself yesterday to do a lot of yoga and meditation, and did a very big round through the forest. And after that, it subsided. But in the beginning, let's say yesterday morning, it wasn't good as I stood up. But when I say, then that's the thing. Our whole society is in this victim.
But let's jump on to Aaron a minute. So, Aaron, where you are in this climate where it's more sunshine, this, that, the other, would you perceive these people have got probably a lot less money than the average in the kind of England and places like that, in the higher, bigger cities? But do they seem more of a happier disposition? Well, you said they do, don't you?
They absolutely are. Everybody greets you with a genuine smile in the gym. Even people that you've never seen before, they greet you, bon dia, bon tarde. You know, there is a genuine feeling of higher vibration.
So it's climate. It could be climate driven then, can't it?
Well, I think that the climate has got a great deal to do with it, because you see, when I used to work as a scuba diver instructor in Greece, people used to come from all over Europe. Now, the ones that came from kind of like France and Spain and Portugal, they had a much more relaxed and brighter and jovial disposition. Whereas the people that came from Finland and Sweden, they were like stonefish. They were cold as ice, and really, they used to sit on the boat, and I would have to give a lecture for about an hour about what's going to be happening, during the dives and everything. And I'd be making some jokes, and because if people are going to be trying a scuba diving dive for the first time, then there's a certain level of anxiety which pertains to that. And so therefore you want to eradicate that. You want to break the ice. You want to get them laughing, feeling comfortable with you and the instructors. And so, but to to get those Nordic people to, start to enjoy themselves was almost an impossibility. But every single night they would be absolutely pissed, and then they'd be shooting their mouths off and singing all their variety of songs and everything. That seems the only way that they could escape.
That's a very interesting analogy, that is, to use that boat and use that metaphor of different people on board, and then you say the same thing to the same people, but they're all giving you a different vibe back.
Yeah, there's a different vibration, and so what I can absolutely say is that as far as I'm concerned, I need the sun. And with the few days that it was completely overcast here down in the Algarve, it's kind of like, oh, okay, it's only today, and tomorrow, it's forecast to be just sporadic clouds and this, that, and the other. But there's a certain weight that does come over you. Even me, with my bright spirit that's an acceptance of, it's only weather, that sort of thing. But I've said to you, Paul, there's no way on this earth am I ever going to reside back in the UK for a long period of time.
Look at the word. Look at the word they tell us when the weather comes out. They go, it's high pressure or it's low pressure. So there's isobars pushing down. There's something going on there. There's a pressure that's lower. You'll see something like 800 isobars, as opposed to, if it's high pressure, it might be 1800. So there's something pushing down. Something's going on with the pressure around us. We don't understand. We're not in that verse to understand all that. But there's something going on.
Well, I think that there is something going on with the highs and the lows, and if only the metaphor involved in this is low pressure today, people, or it's high pressure today. Yeah. But the world becomes a different place when it's all grey, low cloud, and you look outside and you see when the light isn't cast on the buildings, and then they're a darker shade of dull and grey, and there's no vibrancy. And of course, in the Northern Hemisphere during the winter time, when all of the leaves are falling off the trees, unless they're evergreen, and there's no flowers, and there's no soul to the place. And it's kind of like everybody goes into hibernation. They get their heads down, they pull the collars up, and they just do it for the next 6 or 8 months, which is, what it's kind of like in the Northern Hemisphere. And so when you look at that, and you know that absolutely to be a critical factor, cast your mind now to the environment that you're in. Also, are you in a rundown, impoverished environment? Are you in a job which is a dead-end job, and the people in this vicinity are, they're going nowhere and they've got nothing to say? And if you are the variety of person that's watching these videos, you're looking for inspiration, you're learning things about the world, and yet you pack meat in a factory, you're in the wrong environment, people. And I would say it's really, really important. Just go and sweep the streets. Instead, at least you're outside and you're away from those negative, dull people in that negative, repetitive, monotonous hellhole of a factory. Some people, they're packing chickens for 12 hours a day in a fridge, and it's mind-blowingly preposterous. And so change your environment. That's what I'm saying, like Chris is saying. And this is what I advise people whom I am engaged with, because obviously this is the prerequisite. If you're feeling so low, try to change your environment.
It's almost like the society around us says, if you challenge that, you're a bad apple. But like I said about that story before, it's not so much you're a bad apple, it's the barrel's bad, what you're in, isn't it?
Well, yeah, your environment. So change your environment. Look at the practical aspects of it. And when you get out of bed in the morning and you're on a low, think, okay, well, I'm getting out of bed, because there's a propensity to think, like, I can't be bothered to get out of bed. What's the point? There's no point in getting out of bed. I'm going to call in sick because I don't want to stand or be in the office all day long with a long face. People say to me, are you all right? Are you all right? Because when people do that, it accentuates it, and it makes me feel even worse, so I don't want to do that. But you see, if we change our environment, if you go, okay, so I'm not going to work, but what I am doing is I'm going out for a 3-hour walk, and I'm going to walk around this woods and the park and everything like that, and I'm going to do a little bit of jogging, and I'm going to try to change my mindset. And even if my mindset is stuck fast in this variety of depression, then at least you've changed the environment, and you're not just moping around and dwelling on it. And so this practical advice is really about all anybody can do, really. Because it's all based on your practical reality. Lots of psychologists will say that depression is born out of people's environments, and what it stems from the level of discontentment. It's nothing to do with the chemical imbalance in the brain. It's to do with you're getting up, you've got a life of drudgery, you've got nothing to look forward to.
And the disconnection from the actual true spiritual aspect of you being, Aaron. You know what I'm saying? Like you're still.
Yeah, I mean, most people they don't know they've got a spirit, Paul. There's only very few people that Some people might say, "Oh yeah, we're spirit," but they've never felt it. They've never touched upon it. How many people really have touched upon that? Yes, I am an I, and I know that this body is a non-reality because I've looked into it, and every avenue I look into, I can see the non-reality of it, but I can't deny the I because the I is always there.
No, so, we're talking about like it's second nature to these people. It doesn't even exist, does it? It's not even around the bend anytime soon.
No. And so Chris has just spoken about his episodes, and you see, well, like me, for instance, I mean, I've been speaking with Chris for a couple of years now, and I didn't know he suffered from depression or has these encounters.
Yeah, no, I don't really call it. Maybe you can call it depression, but it happened in the end of 2017. And the whole this year is like up and down for me, because I think so much changing in my life, and other stuff happens all the time, and I have to get a ground base now, a base line, let's say, a new foundation again, and
so
that's
when you was in that space, then, Chris, do you feel like you're in a hole? And you can't get out.
No, it feels like I make the example. That's why I think a lot of people who are in that space can relate. It's like, for me, it's like a demotivational feeling. No matter what I think about, it's like, I don't want to do that. No matter what it is, even meditation, yoga, even, let's say, good or bad stuff. Nothing is like, fuck it, I don't want to do that. And you really have to force yourself to do anything at all. And it's like that for me. But it's not a mindset. That's the thing. It's like a feeling that comes over, and then that feeling demotivates you to do anything at all. And then you have to force yourself to do yoga or meditation or the forest walk. But when you do it, then it helps. But you have to force yourself.
Yeah, you have to force it.
Yeah.
And so when it comes about, Chris, does it come about very quickly, or does it come about slowly over a period of, say, like a few days?
No, very quickly, like in 1 minute, and then it's there, and then it's like you're there in that space, and then it takes very long, or it depends, sometimes longer to get out of it, sometimes it gets away quick. But it comes on in a minute or even 30 seconds, then you're in it.
So you get no warning whatsoever. You could be out. You could be out having a great time with people at a party. Then all of a sudden, 1 minute, someone's or something is turned the switch
just
on you.
Just one sentence from a person can throw you back into that feeling. It's most of the time. It's just, for me, it's like thinking about getting a job in a way. Sometimes I think it's most of that throws me back into that when I see people, especially when let's make that example. Last time I was a whole week. I was away the whole week in my mom's place, and it was a great week. But the last day, Saturday, when I was there, everything went great, and the partner of my mother had was partying his birthday, and then I meet some other YouTuber. they are YouTubers too, but they are family friends from the partner of my
So
mother.
did you automatically feel like judged then or something?
Yeah, like almost like that. But I'm judging myself. I know that I'm not judged from other people. I'm just judging myself, and then I'm getting into that feeling again. Yeah, I have to find a job, and yeah, my chances are not so good because I don't had a job for the last 7 years. Nobody gives me a job. Only fucking jobs, and the government. All that, millions of factors come together to give me that feeling. No, I can't pinpoint it to one thing. That's the thing, and then I know I have to change my mindset.
So when you're in the space of consciousness, like say when Aaron's walking around in that forest bit, in your space, you create that space. Obviously, I create that space in a different way. So when you're in that space, in a non-judgmental spectrum, you feel at one and feel at ease. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It's when I'm getting out of that, I know it was so stupid to feel like that. It's just, but when you're in that, that's the thing. I totally saw when you're in that space, and people tell you millions of things that really are practical, like do this and search for this or do this and all that stuff. For me, it feels then even worse. Then because people, I know what they're telling me is right, and I totally agree with what they're telling me. But because I know it's right, what they're telling me, it feels even worse. That I'm not doing that. I don't. The motivation is still not there to do that. You still have to force yourself. And then when people just say, "Yeah, do this" and all that, it's making it worse.
It's a bit like you, Aaron, isn't it? Like where you're at the moment. You've got to move again soon, haven't you? So that kind of level, that border to cross is coming up, and it's a case of it's taking you from now you're in that space again, aren't you? And it's a case of that other space is coming towards you, and isn't it a bizarre place, this space?
It's a very, very bizarre place, yes. And so what it is how I've studied this thing over this past, say, like few years, is that when you are left to just be, then that's when potentially you can be absolutely calm. You can be in this joyful realm because there's no pressure. You see, it's the pressure that is.
There's no traction, is there? The traction doesn't exist.
No traction.
Well, as in like, if you in this dimension, you've always got to hold your grip or moving into different places and this, that, and in a concrete jungle. But in that space, it's all fluid, isn't it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's nothing to be done unless you are moved to do it in a very, very fluid and casual way. The things I've been moved to do naturally in my life are maintain a level of fitness, i.e. in the gym, go for lots of walks, cycle, play my music, enjoy the natural world and just observe. When I'm doing that, I'm absolutely blissful. But you see, now I know that I could potentially have 6 more weeks left here, but in June the weather gets so hot and there's too much of an influx of holidaymakers that the beaches are full, and I don't like the beaches when they're full of people, and because it's not conducive to my walking meditations and my calm observation. And so I'm pressured now to move from this beautiful utopia that I'm in, an absolute gorgeous apartment in a gorgeous area, and it's kind of like when I try to look, incredibly difficult to find, and then the pressure starts to build up, and I'll look and look and look for 2 hours, and at the end of it I don't come up with anything. All it tells me that it's almost impossible, and then it's kind of like, well, where am I going to go from here? And then I have to start to look at other options. Well, go back to England. I'm like, no, I can't go back to England. And so there's a level of frustration. Now, of course, my level of frustration is tiny compared to most people. If they've got, say, like 3 kids and they've got a high mortgage, and their partner's just lost his job for whatever reason, they're the only breadwinner, the pressure's on, and look at the enormous amount of pressure. Is it any wonder where people just, retreat back in to the lower echelons of their consciousness, whereby they just get their heads down and they just go on automated doing because they know that they have to do this, and they can't afford themselves any of the pleasures outside of that because they don't have the energy for it. When we compromise to such a degree, look at all of the potential beauty that falls away. It's a bit like if you are a foundering ship out on the ocean. What they used to do was, like, they'd throw all the cannons over, they'd throw all the excess food over, anything to stay afloat, you see. And this is what most people are doing. They are detaching themselves from all of the potential joys of this world and whatever could be considered to be bliss, because they're under such pressure that they are...
Yeah, it's like the battle, it's like the battling down the hatches, and then you're not letting no light in, kind of thing.
Yeah, and also they do this out of protection, because when the body starts to get afraid, then of course it's afraid of...
So is this manufactured, what we're talking about is this is a manufactured system then, isn't it? We've talked about this in a different, can't go off too much off track, but it's an actual design, isn't it, that we're talking about? Are we not? It's by design. If you've got 3 kids, you're under immense pressure, you've got the mortgage, you've got these houses, this, that and the other, it's almost, or is it a case of, is it that person's choice? Or is it too long in life to change corner, change round?
Well, there's so many variables that come into it. Of course, we can look at it a bit like David Icke, and it's all a contrivance, and they want to take all of your money and all of your energy, and they want to control you to such a degree. So what they have to do is they have to scare the shit out of you every single day, and they can't, or they don't want to pay you enough to start enjoying yourself, because if you start enjoying yourself, you might get to like it too much, and you might want a bit more of it. Then you might want to start taking longer holidays. No, you get back to work, you see. And so therefore they want you scared, and they've got it all tied up very, very nicely, because it's you know, it's an autocratic system that we're in of slave masters. And so there is that aspect of it. But then if you look at your personal level, well, you look at the world and you go, well, hang on, okay, so I've got to do an amount of slavery, but I'm going to make it as painless as I possibly can. And so I'm going to, you know, do 4 days a week here in this nice environment. That gives me 3 days off. And because I work hard on those 4 days and I'm skilled because I've put some time and effort into gaining a skill, then I can command more money, and so therefore I have more surplus money to spend. There's so many variables that come into it. You see, the issue comes down to ultimately is that the people who are on the lowest rung of the ladder, they don't have any skills worth any amount of money. It's minimum wage, so therefore they get the absolute shit end of any job that's going to be going. And of course, these days the jobs are just very, very automated. It's like picking and packing, or assembling, and all this sort of mindless shit. And what that does, it just it permeates your mind, and it perverts it into literally counting sheep. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, lying in bed counting sheep. Can you imagine, like, if you watch these Chinese production lines, they're there for 12 hours a day, putting one single screw into, like, the base of a kettle. Or
and they've got those nets on the outside of the building, so you can't jump out. Jump and commit suicide.
Yeah, you can't end it that way. So there's many ramifications of it, but people, they have to look at their lives with a certain intelligence, and it's not assessing. It's all about assessing. It's looking at yourself. It's looking at your environment, and it's envisioning what changes you can make to put you into another mansion within God's kingdom. Because if it's like this dead-end job, and you think, oh, I've been at that job 3 years now, and it's so shit, and I've not gone forward, well, try something else then. You know, be a little bit adventurous. And so this is all the sort of thing. And of course, it's so individual that you can't make any sweeping statements about this. And so this is why then it's so difficult to fix a person's problem outside of an individual consultation.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You can just, again, like, That's why I say that works for me, yoga, meditation, and walks in nature. I don't know if it works for some people. It will work too, but not for everyone. And everyone, like Aaron said, is in a different situation and has, let's say, not so good feeling about his life, whatever, from different factors in his life. But most of the time, I think I don't know, but it's because of like Paul mentioned briefly with the system. It's directed in that way that we shouldn't look outside the box. People who look outside the box are like we are, like misfits and outcasts and stuff, and then you see the world for what it really is. And some people don't want to see that because then they are afraid and don't want to take on.
It would shatter their paradigm, won't it?
Yeah,
of course. They believe in, you know.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, if you sat with, like, say, your brother Aaron, who you used to go out on the bike rides with, you know, it was unreachable, wasn't he? You know, at the end of the day, it was
completely unreachable, and I would confidently state that it wouldn't matter how much time I spent with him, he would never be reachable. His mind wasn't capable of philosophy. He would have no idea what philosophy is about, absolutely no idea about psychology, no idea about anything except what he's learnt from the television. One of those drones, you know.
And it gives us the, like you say, are we then, like you say, given the ringside seat of consciousness to look at this dimension and how it plays out? And then obviously, like you just said, how do you reach somebody when they're stuck in this position and their mind and their position's been like that for 50, 60 years? And to actually turn around and go, you've been living a complete and utter wrong way of living this life from an incident, and the situation is, can you turn around now? Is it worth turning around to these people? A bit like your dad, Aaron, when you said your dad couldn't see any joy at the end of it. You know, you couldn't turn him around, could you? You know, it's almost like it switched off and that was it.
Yeah, I think there's so much to be said for teaching old dogs new tricks. Yeah. You really up against it there. But I think there is there's positive, there's something to be gained, and there's potential from trying to guide people whom are young. They've had upbringings that have not been so conducive to happiness. And so whilst they're young and the programs aren't so deep, then they may be penetrated, and you may be able to override their programs. But like Paul says, when they're too long in the tooth, forget it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's even in the movie The Matrix. What they tell Neo when they get him out of the Matrix, and they say, "Yeah, some people at a certain age we don't get them out of the Matrix anymore because they reached." They would fight. They would fight. It's even in the movie. They would fight to defend the Matrix, and I see that even in people around me when I sometimes I don't do that anymore with conspiracy theories, you know. But sometimes I let's say question the status quo in a way, you know, with some questions. But I see sometimes with people, it's like, it's so obvious to me that they even would give their lives to defend this fucking system. They could. They even when I talk to them, they like, fuck this job and this fucking taxes and this fucking insurance and all that stuff. Then I say, yeah, you know, you don't have to. We can change that. We have to change ourselves, and how. And then I fantasize like, yeah, how, in what kind of world we would live in when we don't have this and that. And then they even like, no, then would be chaos. And of course the system is fucked, but at least it's not so bad here in Germany, you know, or something like that. They say, and I see that totally in them, that they would even give their life to defend this fucking system. They are totally hating it. Obviously, like, it's fucked up. But in the same sentence, they say, "Yeah, but it's still not so bad, and it's still." They
well, yeah. Look, just look how fucked up it is. We whatever the amount we put in, we put taxes in to a degree that pay the police officers to control and manipulate and keep everybody else in check. So you're paying people to fucking hold you in prison.
Yeah,
It's like fucking insane.
We're paying our own prison warders, yes.
Yeah.
But you see, when you look at people who are prepared to die for a certain ideology, which they've become so accustomed to, the reason why they do this is because the fear potential is too great to consider something else, and they don't have the scope of mind to be able to consider any philosophical utopia, like a world without work and a world without taxes. Well, how would the world be? We need to work. Well, we don't need to work. You see, if you look at this work as something that you need to do and you're forced into doing, then that isn't something that actually really needs to come about. But things have to be produced, because if you look around you, then you see, if you want a car, then someone's got to make the car. If you want to live in a house, someone's got to make the house. But if it's made under a different pretense, or different context, if there's a joy in it, you're not forced to do it. You do it because you like doing it. And so if we have this sort of utopia whereby, listen, people, there's all these varieties of jobs to do, they're all paid the same, and it's just a case of, you know, what you want to lend your hand. If you want to be creative, if you want to do this, if you want to do that. If there's a sector of society that doesn't want to do anything in this productive way, then they can choose to do something else. They can choose to you know, be productive in a helpful way, in some sort of, you know, humanitarian way. There's different ways, but people, they can't get their heads around this because they're in this.
Because it's almost like pigeonholed, isn't it? It's like put in these positions where you could say, what is an artist? If somebody produces a beautiful piece of art, and then somebody else is a mechanic, you know, where's the variable aspect of the monetary terms of what those two values are? Do you understand what I'm saying? That painting could be worth £1 million, as opposed to that mechanic could not work all his life and get that. It's crazy, isn't it, when you look at it?
Yeah, but also if you look at, say, like a mechanic spending, say, 5 hours repairing a car, that's got a practical value. If you look at an artist spending 5 hours creating a piece of art, well, that's got a spiritual value, hasn't it? And you can't put any money on it, really, even though they do put money on everything because they want to control it ultimately. But, you know, how can you put a price on a feeling that is derived from a piece of art? You know, it shouldn't be done.
Yeah, so do you think the biggest battle in the world at the moment is between like you said, what we're talking about, knowing that there is a spiritual aspect and a part of us that is buried, and the other aspect of these people that have got like almost their cupboards are full of junk and they don't even realise what's behind the junk. So it's a case of, like you said earlier on, how do you reach these people, Aaron? It's kind of the first thing, the key word is turn around and look at yourself and realise who you are and realise that the power's within yourself, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, but people don't want to do that. It's the last thing they want to do. Like Jung says, it is the last thing anybody wants to do is to look at their shit, to look at their shadow. Most people, you see, they just expect to be born into a utopia, and their mindset is that they shouldn't have to do anything to create this utopia. It should just be there for them. But you see, if you explain to them, hang on, if this utopia is going to come about, then it's going to need input from everybody, because this is what creates these utopias. It's the energy and the consensus and drive to achieve a certain something which comes about from, you know, a large group of people. And so if you're the sort of person that just wants to dwell in a utopia without putting into it, then you're nothing more than a parasite, you see.
Yeah, and to finish that up, I think we can all say something. We have now 5 minutes left for this recording, and I think we all, like last time we three talked, it's always funny to me when we do that. We all say the same thing, just in different ways. It's And for me, it's obvious. We can change people in a way. We are making these videos for people who are, in a way, woke up or saw the box from outside. Let's say it this way, and then they need some. What I have like a lot. I think that has a lot to do with my let's say depressional phases, with that loneliness. When you get outside the box, you are the outcast, you are the misfit in this society because you challenge the status quo, and then you are. But we are social beings. We want to be a part of something bigger and of a society. Let's call it this way. And I think the best way is when you saw that it's fucked up, what everybody knows, at least unconsciously. The only thing you can do is, or not the only thing is, but the best thing you can do is still look at yourself, look at your shadow, like Carl Jung says, change that stuff you don't want to be anymore or see anymore in yourself, and then you are the not icon is the wrong word, but you are the person, you are instigating the change then in yourself, and then you're helping other people with that. You can't force people to change themselves. It never works, in my opinion, at least.
Well, if you can touch, even if it's a start, even if it's a small thing that you can create, it might be such a small thing. You know, I kind of, you know, there's many multiple things I can go into, but if you can just touch something that then touches you back that you're doing, whatever it is, and it's feeding in a circle, in a loop that's making your soul move and shape and maneuver in this paradigm. That's the key to it. It might be just a very mundane thing to somebody. It might be just like, you know, fucking gardening or something like that, or whatever it is. But it's creative, isn't it?
Yeah, or just smiling at I always see that when I'm walking through the forest. I greet every person and I smile. Even if I have a bad mood, I still force myself to smile. And I see that even people that touches them, you know, that, there's something, the first person or maybe the only person that smiled at me today. Even these fucking small things can change a lot, at least. For me, I saw that all the time. Small things can change.
Sure.
A lot.
And what you're doing in context is smiling at yourself, aren't you?
Yeah.
If you want to build a real one or whatever.
Yeah, and so what I would say then about all this stuff that we're doing, when we acquire a certain degree of knowledge and wisdom, is it possible not to carry the weight of the world? Because we've learnt about it, we know about what is in existence in the matrixial holographic world. We look around and we are caught amidst the paradox, because albeit we've become spiritually endowed and we know it to be an illusion, we still can potentially feel the pain and the anguish of looking at our fellow man around us in such a inhumane state.
Yeah, well, that's part of the parcel of the enlightenment, isn't it? I reckon that one of the last stages, the final two stages, one is to realise where you are, and then getting kind of the position of being in the oneness of where you are, whether it's a forest or whatnot. And then the last stage is kind of embracing the whole of everything, where it doesn't matter where you appear or where you drop in this universe, on this planet, you're at ease with yourself, because everything else is Maya. That's what I perceive that bit is, and that's the hardest bit to reach, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we're all stuck in that one.
Yes, and so when you look at these gurus then, Ramana, whatever his name is, Maharshi.
Ramana Maharshi, but we still have 30 seconds, we don't have, make it short.
Okay, so what I would say about that spiritual philosophy is that nothing is of any consequence except the I. And so when you get to such a advanced level, then you evidently stop caring about man, because caring is a nonsensical human